Thank you, Broadcasting. We resume now with Creative Australia. Senator Henson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the question that I asked on notice in relation to your peer assessment panels for each grant recipient. You'll be pleased to know that I'd like to narrow that request.
How gracious of you, Senator.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's that time
Not
of
that
night.
they wouldn't have complied. I think that's a wise
No,
decision.
that's right. So I just want to make things a bit easier because I know we're talking about a lot of grants. So if we could have each peer assessment panel, so the panel membership for each individual grant, individual or organisation, but only limited to the visual arts and to literature. Yep. So if we exclude dance, circus, music and theatre, I think that just leaves literature and visual arts, is that right?
Yeah, literature and visual arts. Yeah,
from the 1st of July 2024 until now, or whenever you submit your response to the Quan, maybe by the end, pretty much close to the end of this financial year. And could we just, in that list for each grant recipient, could we just have the anyone who has recused themselves? So we just understand. So I just want to understand the recusals as well. So I'm trying to make your work in your period as acting chief executive.
And that's assessed by peers, Senator.
Sorry?
That's grants that are assessed by peers.
Yes, yeah. So for every grant awarded, I just would like the list of the peer assessors for that grant. So I know you've got the peer assessors on your website, but we don't know who assessed who. So I just want to.
I think you could actually match them, Senator, because we would give the outcomes of the particular rounds by panel. I think
it's not. You can't actually directly match them because we don't. Yeah. So while there is some linkage, it doesn't show which peer assessors assessed which particular grant recipient.
Let us take your request and see what we can
And
do.
of course we don't know whether there were recusals because of any conflicts or any other reason, absences or... so that would be really
and just
very
to confirm,
much...
that's visual arts and literature. Yep.
Visual arts and literature, thank you.
Thank you.
I just... One thing's been troubling me over the dinner break. So, I mean, obviously taxpayer dollars are very precious. And so you walk through the substantial amount of funding, which, as you say, has been partially offset by donations for the Venice Biennale. But on top of that was this $200,000 amount attributed to the freight and to the other costs for the La Biennale for Mr Subsabi's separate exhibition. If you don't know what his commissioning fee was, then that does concern me because if his commissioning fee may well have been $500,000, it could have been $1 million.
It may be nothing as well, Senator.
Well, but isn't it incumbent on Creative Australia to make that inquiry?
Well, we got a grant to fund certain costs. I'd have to go back and look at
those costs may have been picked up through the commissioning process.
Well, we actually paid the suppliers for those costs.
It's a direct
So directly paid those suppliers for those costs.
Okay.
We didn't give the money. We did not give the money to the artist.
So you've paid those suppliers directly. Well, no, but what I'm still saying is that the commissioning amount that Mr Subsabi received may have included or accounted for other costs. Now that's a private commissioning fee, I understand that, but I'm just worried about the case which concerns the safeguarding of every precious taxpayer dollar. Has there been any double up in terms of
I do not think there has been, Senator, at all.
Would you be able to seek that information from Mr Subsabi?
I can ask the question, Senator. Absolutely, but
Because-
it is a separate private relationship between
Yeah, I
him
know.
and La Biennale.
But can I just put to you that it's appropriate that you probably should have asked that question before he received a $200,000 grant for those costs?
But he wasn't given a $200,000
No,
grant.
no,
If
but
that grant came to Creative Australia, so there was an important distinction.
No, I realise what you're saying, that the payment went to his suppliers or supplies for the freight, bringing the installation to Venice and the like. But if his commissioning fee included or accommodated those sorts of costs as well, I think it would have been incumbent on Creative Australia to make those inquiries before those costs were paid by Creative Australia.
So, Senator, what I can do is I can take it on notice and I can make those inquiries to see what information I can get. Right? Oh, hang on a minute. We're getting information. There is no commissioning fee paid to artists participating in La Biennale's main exhibition. So
No commissioning fee?
No commissioning fee.
And where did you get that advice from?
That has been confirmed. That's been written up in a number of publications about how the payment works for La Biennale in the main exhibition.
But you've just received a message, obviously, on your phone. So who conveyed that message to you?
Oh, one of our staff members.
Oh, one of your staff.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that you gave evidence earlier, Mr Blackwell, that there'd been a commissioning fee paid to Mr Subsabi.
That commissioning grant was for the exhibition in the Australian Pavilion in the Giardini, for which Creative Australia is the commissioner.
No. I'm talking about the La Biennale commissioning fee, the private commissioning fee.
I don't know whether one had been paid or not.
Yeah, but just to clear this up. Earlier in your evidence before dinner, you said that he was paid a commissioning fee, but you didn't know what it was, and that's what I was asking you about. But Mrs. Grayson, you've now confirmed that no commissioning fee was paid.
Yeah. I think we'd have to check the record, but I do believe Mr Blackwell qualified it, saying he wasn't sure if there was a fee. He would need to check that. And then that led to your questioning around the fee.
I think you said you weren't sure what amount was paid. I didn't get the impression that you didn't know whether the fee was paid or not, but we can always check the Hansard. Anyway, I'm just wanting to clear up the situation in relation to those various payments. So just in terms of the direct supplier payments, who were those payments made to and for how much?
A whole variety of suppliers. There's many different components to go to making work, transporting work, installing work and such like.
So carriers, freight companies, with materials,
fabrication, installation costs,
and they were all
riggers.
Okay, and they
video
were all
artists, video people who, it was video work, as I think you can see if you look at the... What? Tech.
Right.
Minister.
Industry.
And did Mr Subsabi have, they're all third-party payments. Did Mr Subsabi have an interest in any of those other payments? Like, in terms of, say, it was a video production company, did he have an interest in the video production company? Have you checked any of that?
Not to my knowledge, Senator, no.
So there's no... Would you be able to verify that?
Not right now.
No, on notice. I meant on notice. Okay, great. Always fighting for the taxpayer, Mr Blackwell. I just... the other thing that I've been mulling over dinner is I've been quite taken aback by the $1.7 million cost. You have detailed those costs, but if I could ask you on notice to provide details as to all expenditure for that 1.7 million, I'd be really grateful.
Okay, so we'll take that on notice.
Yeah, please take it on notice. Yeah. Any other big blocks of expenditure coming up for Creative Australia, Mr. Blackwell?
Absolutely. We.
You say that. You say that with a great deal of pride.
Senator, can you just give me that piece of the annual report? That thing. If I can point you to where our expenditure goes.
Yes, please.
You can see that it's actually significant. So this is taken from last year's annual report. And if you look on page 5 for that, there's a financial. Actually, no, it's not. I'm not. I don't actually have the annual report page reference on it because this was a selection. But we in 2024-25, so last financial year, our total investment in the sector, directly and indirectly, was $285.8 million. That represented 90% of the appropriation that we received. People costs associated with that were 7%, so that's 90%, and 7%, that's your 97%, and the overhead and depreciation amount was 3%.
I'm just
and
on
within
the
those, just let me just round that out for you if I could. Out of that 7% for the people cost, the program delivery team was 5% of that, and the supporting activities team like finance and IT and those sorts of, if you like, back office operations was 2%. So you look at the total people costs and overhead and depreciation, that was 5% of the total appropriation. Total income that Creative Australia had last year was for overhead, and 90% of it went out to the sector, which I think demonstrates good use of taxpayers' money.
I'm just.
Would you like, Senator, a further breakdown?
Yeah, I would. If you look, maybe if you could do that on notice.
Well, it's actually in our annual report, in that investment overview. So you can see that, and the bulk of it, as I think I said to Senator Roberts earlier, goes through multi-government frameworks, which would be the National Performing Arts Partnership frameworks, and the Visual Arts and Craft and Design framework. That was, say, 145 million of that total, which is by far the biggest.
All right. I was on your website trying to navigate to your annual report. I keep going around in circles, but maybe it's just because it's getting a bit late.
Sure.
That's okay. And so, what are your big goals for the coming 12 months?
That will be set out in our corporate plan. A lot of the activities for Creative Australia will be. A lot of the activities will be similar to last year, because a lot of this funding is either multi-government frameworks, which have formal frameworks for state and federal and territory governments, and also for multi-year investment. So a lot of that funds are already committed as we go through. And then we've got various different activities. So we've got what I would call direct investment, which is through multi-year funded agreements, project grants, initiatives, and we have indirect investment, which we have for what we work for capability building programs, so education for arts workers in the arts sector, so that they can go back to their organisations and help those organisations perform better. So that we've got a whole range of activities, and which you will see obviously in our corporate plan when it comes out in August.
Fantastic. Well, on that note, I wish you all the very best for the coming year, or the rest of the year, the new financial year. Thank you very much for your time and attendance this evening.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Blackwell and Mrs. Grayson.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. On that note,
Thank you.
thank you very much for your attendance and for your evidence here this evening. You go with the committee's thanks.
Thank you very much indeed.
I now call officers of Screen Australia. I've got a copy of that script as written. Oh, well, I've done with mine. Yeah, that's right. I know, I have it. Thank you, sorry. Sure. Actually, we are. I didn't turn it off.
Could have been worse.
Sorry.
Could have been worse.
No, sorry, I just slipped my mind.
That's the chair's fault.
Sorry. Now I'm giggling.
Sorry. We are. Bridgie and I are having a quiet chat about your netball and your murderous thumbs.
All right. Thank you. We welcome officers from Screen Australia. I welcome Ms. Grain Brunston. Is that how I pronounce your name? Grania, sorry.
That's it.
Ms. Grania Brunston, Chief Operating Officer, and your team here today. Do you wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for inviting us. We appreciate the opportunity to join the committee today. Our CEO, Deirdre Brennan, sends her apologies for her absence due to personal circumstances. Joining me today is our Chief Financial Officer, Mark Reid. Screen Australia remains focused on delivering its core funding programs, supporting Australian stories across all platforms, from film and television to online and direct-to-audience formats and digital games development. We continue to prioritise the growth of a vibrant and viable screen industry that reflects the depth and diversity of Australian stories. Our work is guided by our strategic framework, grounded in 5 pillars that align with the government's National Cultural Policy Revive. We continue to align with government priorities and welcome the consultation process on the development of the new National Cultural Policy to shape the future direction of the creative and cultural sectors, including screen and games production. Screen Australia is actively engaging with this consultation process and is contributing a written submission. We also acknowledge the appointment of our CEO, Deirdre Brennan, to the Policy Advisory Group, who will help represent the perspectives of the screen and games sector. Screen Australia's research programs are building a comprehensive evidence base on the sector's impact, gaps and emerging priorities and opportunities. This includes Screen Currency 2026 to be released in July this year, the most significant research conducted by our agency in a decade. This landmark national research project measures the economic, social and cultural value of Australia's screen and games industries. It will be an essential tool to help the entire industry navigate today's challenges and seize the opportunities of tomorrow. The research will also help government to understand and track the public benefit from investment in screen and games and will feed into other outputs such as Creative Australia's State of Culture report. Without diving into the detail, we wish to take this opportunity to highlight some of the key themes coming out of the research. The first is that despite access to more global options than ever, Australians place great value on local screen content and that Australians value authentic stories that allow us to see ourselves and each other. Another theme is that local content drives social impact and action beyond viewing, positioning screen and games not merely as cultural products, but as levers of social change and community cohesion. And finally, Australia's screen and games content is a proven cultural export with significant soft power value. We encourage government and industry stakeholders to take a look at the full findings when Screen Currency 2026 is released in July. For additional insight, the production infrastructure and capacity analysis which we commissioned from Olsberg SBI and released in April as part of our research program suite, is another valuable resource. Screen Australia looks forward to continuing to work closely with partners across government, industry and the broader creative ecosystem to maximise the impact of public investment and strengthen the overall sustainability of the local sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Henderson.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, and good evening to you all. Apologies, we've kept you waiting a little bit of time. I just want to firstly go to the documentary film Sentient.
Yep.
This is the film where Sarah Ferguson, the host of the ABC's 7:30 program, is the executive producer. The reason I'm asking about this was a matter that was not disclosed to the ABC until fairly recently. You might have heard evidence earlier in the day. I note with interest that this was disclosed. It's part of your 23-24 annual report when you were obviously reporting on documentary commissioned programs, and so that lists Sentient as a 1 by 90-minute documentary, Sentient Pictures, with Ms Ferguson as the EP and an amount of $200,000. Was that the earliest publication of Ms Ferguson's role as EP?
I would have to check that because it may have been released in a media release prior to the annual report being published, but I need to take that on notice.
If you could take that on notice, please.
Yes.
And also any correspondence from Sentient Pictures or Mr Jones or Ms Ferguson in relation to Ms Ferguson's role as EP?
Okay.
If you could take that
on notice as well and see what we can do.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, I do appreciate that.
Yep.
So just in terms of your investment in that film, what are the funding terms of your agreement?
It was production funding, so $200,000 contribution to the overall production budget, which is obviously made up then with other financiers and contributions from other parties. It had a budget of over $3 million, so $200,000 was a contribution to that overall budget, and it was to produce the project, the documentary. And
it's been screened at Sundance. Do you know what the arrangements are for Australia? Is that part of your agreement?
It would be... No, it's not part of our agreement. The pathway to audience, which is what we call it, is how are they going to get in front of an Australian audience. That would be part of their plan and certainly would have been part of their application, and it would have been assessed on that. Their festival it would have been an aspiration at the time because it wouldn't have been selected until the film was finished and viewed by the festival. But I'll take on notice what the plans were and what they may be for the Australian release.
Well, the distribution would be set out in your agreements, wouldn't they?
It might, at the time of application, it may not be clear yet. And when they come in through the producer program, applicants don't need to have everything locked. They get a certain amount of time from our commitment of funds. If they can then lock the finance, lock their market partners for distribution, we then move to contracting to release that funding. So at the time of application, it may not have been clear.
No, but I'm talking about in the contract itself.
In the contract, yes, that absolutely would be part of it. So and there is a local distributor attached to it.
And contingent on Australian government funding through Screen Australia, there is a requirement to broadcast the film in Australia. There needs to
not necessarily broadcast, but because it could be a theatrical release. So it may not need to go to a commissioner. It doesn't need to go to a commissioner, but it does need to be shown to an Australian audience.
And what's your minimum requirements? So, and what if it's a theatrical release? Is it got to be a minimum amount of time? I imagine it would be more than a couple of showings?
We don't have a minimum because that's really run by the market. So it will depend on what the distributor... Everybody's going to want to get the maximum they can in a cinema.
Yeah.
And that will depend on the cinemas and on the distributor and what they're able to achieve for an individual project.
Could you take on notice... You don't know what the arrangements are in relation...
No, I'm not sure, yeah.
If you could take on notice and provide us with those details, we would be... I would be most grateful. Thank you. Can I just turn to your application process, how many new applicants who receive funding in 22-23 also receive funding in 25-26? So, in other words, how many repeat applicants?
I'd need to take that on notice, Senator.
Does that happen a lot, where you have applicants who will be, coming back to you every few years seeking more funding?
Yes, because they're different. Because we fund by project, not by company. So people would have one project get up, whether it's a feature film or a TV series, and then in later rounds they would apply for other funding.
So in the 25-26 financial year, how many, if you could perhaps take it on notice,
we would need to take that on notice.
How many are new applicants? So either individuals or I assume most are companies.
Production companies.
Production companies.
Generally, we have very few sole traders that would be eligible to apply for funding. And is that across everything, Senator, or
just in the 25-26 year? How many of those are new applicants?
In terms of just documentary production?
Yes, across all sectors, please.
All areas. Okay.
Yeah. What KPIs are attached to funding to ensure diverse and unrepresented or minimally represented communities benefit from Screen Australia's grant and development pipelines?
Well, as part of our corporate plan, it's our purpose is about reflecting the diversity of Australian stories and Australian storytellers. So that's a very important aspect of our funding and how we deliver things. We have a number of targeted programs like Digital Originals, which is an initiative that we run with SBS TV, which is specifically aimed at underrepresented voices. And supports a number of teams to develop 6 by 10 minute shows that then screen on SBS TV. They very often get an international premiere as well and then go on to SBS On Demand. We have other projects like Skip Ahead, which is for people with YouTube channels of 25,000 or more subscribers. Again, very much targeting underrepresented voices. We have a number of projects in games. We have our Emerging Game Makers Fund, which again very much targets new games makers and new games companies. There are, in representing those underrepresented voices and parts of the community more broadly, there are we have funding programs that and conditions that require there to be authentic storytelling, whether that's in the development of a story or in the production, and that goes right across. And obviously we have our First Nations department that is specifically tailored for working with First Nations creatives and production companies on the telling of those stories.
Is there any way that you quantify the economic impact of the producer offset and the location offset on domestic workforce retention and also physical infrastructure capacity?
We released last month the production infrastructure and capacity analysis, which goes a long way to doing exactly that. It doesn't correlate the producer offset to retention in the workforce, but it does outline what the capacity of the workforce in Australia is across all the states and what the future workforce may be required. It also details the studio facilities that are available across the country and what studio facilities may be required should the pipeline continue in the way it is and grow.
And so I'm sorry, I apologise.
No, that's okay.
Report, but is that report, does that detail all of the economic impacts of the producer offset and the location offset?
The producer offset, we don't manage the location offset, so that's a matter for the department or for Office for the Arts. In terms of the producer offset, I can tell you how much was claimed on that one last year. I think it was the value of the producer offset in the 24-25 financial year was just over $713 million. A significant increase from $412 million in the financial year 23-24. And that was for 213 final certificates, so 213 projects claimed that money.
And how much of that was Australian versus international?
That's all
production?
domestic. The producer offset is only for Australian content.
So there's no international components at all?
There's likely to be international
Yeah.
finance in some of those because it's very difficult to finance anything in Australia domestically. So there are often international distribution partners or international finance partners or co-commissioning or pre-sales to international territories that form part of the financing of the production.
All right, if you could provide me just with some more information on notice, I'd be really grateful.
Yep.
And just wanting to ask you about the average time frame between an application being submitted and the final funding decision, and as it's published on the Screen Australia Funding Approvals portal.
Is that for producer offset or for production?
No, just all applications.
So it will vary depending on the funding round, but I could provide that on notice to you, Senator.
Yeah, so just the average time frame
Yeah.
would be...
And we do publish in order to manage expectations for people, we do publish those timeframes on the website.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions, Chair, if anyone else does.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for appearing again. My questions go to the DEI agenda of Screen Australia. A producer that used a polite Facebook post to raise the gender imbalance in favour of women in your approved productions and in your management was blocked. These questions are apparently not allowed. Happily, you can't block me, so we'll ask some questions. From your corporate plan, 2023-27, quote, Screen Australia's funding guidelines include an inclusive storytelling statement that highlights our commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion. The agency has developed a series of programs to provide skills development opportunities for diverse practitioners traditionally underrepresented in the Australian screen industry. Screen Australia also has a long-standing commitment to gender equity through its Gender Matters program and KPI, end of quote. Can you show me where in your enabling legislation this DEI requirement was mandated, or is this a decision taken by the management, the board, the government, the minister, KPIs?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. The screen sector in Australia and globally has traditionally been very white and male. The population in Australia, there's slightly more than 50% women in the population in Australia. That's not the case in terms of the representation in the screen sector. There are equal numbers generally in film schools of men and women who finish those studies, but they're then not represented in their stories don't get told, and stories from a female perspective are not always told. Stories from culturally diverse parts of the country are not always told. Our research tells us that Australian audiences value authentic representation of Australian stories, and that goes right across the community. A lot of the research we've done are on seeing ourselves, that goes into the representation of parts of the community on screen and behind the screen, tells us that there are parts of the community that are very severely underrepresented, including people with disability, where 1 in 5 people in the community identify as having a disability, but we don't see that on screen. We do have programs like most of the state screen agencies to develop new stories from different parts of the community. They're stories that travel, they're stories that get audiences in Australia and internationally, and that's one of the reasons that we do that. People like to see themselves, their experiences, and their lives reflected on the stories they watch on screen, whether that's on TV or whether it's in cinema. The Gender Matters task force has been disbanded. The corporate plan that you mentioned has been updated, and we released a new corporate plan last year in April, and that our purpose is about supporting a vibrant and viable screen industry that reflects the diversity of stories and the depth of stories from across Australia. So we're just working with trying to reflect the community of Australia in the stories that get supported and that get shown.
So thank you. I didn't ask you to justify your following of DEI. I just wanted to know if your enabling legislation pushes the DEI or requires DEI, if it was mandated, or if it's a decision taken by the management or the board or the minister or the government? Who set your KPIs on this? You or the government?
We set the KPIs.
So who set the DEI requirement? Was it mandated?
There isn't a DEI requirement mandated, but the functions of Screen Australia under the Screen Australia Act are to support and promote the development of a highly creative, innovative and commercially sustainable Australian screen production industry, and support the development, production, promotion and distribution of Australian programs and the provision of access to Australian programs, to support the development of screen culture in Australia and undertake any other function conferred on it by the law of the Commonwealth. So there are a number of ways that we do that. We're also required to place an emphasis on documentaries and programs of interest or relevance to children, programs with a high level of artistic and cultural merit, and promote the open market as the primary means of support for projects with commercial potential, promote the development of commercially focused screen production businesses, and promote the effective, efficient and ethical use of public resources. There's no DEI component in there. We interpret reflecting these stories to ensure that there is a diversity of stories on screen.
Could you give me on notice, please, your evidence from your research that says DEI improves your capability in all those areas?
I'll take that on notice, Senator.
Thank you. And any peer-reviewed scientific studies would be appreciated as well, because it seems that you're setting them. Looking at your KPIs, the first KPI, 2016 to 2019, at least 50% of production-funded projects to have women in more than or 50% of key creative roles. This was achieved at 56%. Is your KPI really at least 50%? Surely anything above 50% means less meritorious women are being favoured over more meritorious men. Surely the merit ratio is 50 to 50, or in your universe, are women better than men?
Are women better than men? Thank you, Senator. I think it's a KPI that we measure over 3 years, and so it's not that every project has to have women in key creative roles. It's about over the breadth of the projects that we support that we are aiming for that target. And it's a target, it's not a rule. It's something that moves depending on the projects that come in and depending on the creatives already attached to those projects. It's a target that's harder to achieve in feature film because they often come with a writer-director from its origination. A lot of TV series that come to us don't necessarily have all their directors attached, so there's room for things to move in those times. So it really depends on everything. The population isn't quite 50-50.
Slightly more females.
Slightly more females. So we are kind of, that target is about the representation of women relevant to the population and to the community.
Have you done any work on why that used to be lower? Because there are some amazing female producers, directors, actors, whatever you want to call them these days. In the past, surely for commercial interest, people would want to jump on to make sure that women are involved. They provide a more varied and diverse approach. So
yes.
why were they underrepresented?
For a variety of reasons, in the way that they're underrepresented in many parts of the economy and many parts of the sector and in leadership positions more broadly. A lot of women take time out to have children or have other caring responsibilities. It can be more difficult to get back into the sector if you've taken time out for those caring responsibilities. That's certainly one thing. And there are a number of research papers that detail this. People find it more difficult to get jobs when they have children because of the hours that this industry takes when you've got a project in production. So there are a number of barriers there for people to do that. We've recently done some research looking at different methodologies for production. That might be a 9-day fortnight or shorter working hours or 8-hour days, that kind of thing, to try and encourage better working hours for everybody, not just for women or people with caring responsibilities, but actually for the whole workforce.
Because I think most people would agree, from their own experience, it's not just me, that women are generally better carers, and most families make the decision that the children will be cared for by one of the partners, if they can afford it, and that's increasingly unlikely, sadly, these days. But generally that's the woman, because women are better carers.
I couldn't comment, Senator.
I wasn't fishing. The second KPI, 2019 to 2023, more than or equal to 50% of key creative roles across development and production held by women. That was achieved at 55%. Again, tough luck men, because this is all about the women, right?
Well, the KPI is about female representation, yes.
Yeah. Having achieved the earlier targets, rather than holding them there and looking for projects with merit, you increased the targets. For 2023 to 2026, the KPI requires the female mandate to be expanded to include non-binary, gender-diverse people, target more than or 50% of key roles, writer, producer, director, across funded projects, 3-year average. Is women at 50% a hard floor, so bringing in transgenders, men living as women, taking jobs off women, or is transgender a new protected class to add on top of the 50% reserved for women?
No, it's not. 50% is for women and or non-binary or gender-diverse people. So it's an inclusive target of 50%.
So that should be 50% or more?
Yes.
You must be treating it as additional, because the latest data shows that female and trans, etc. producers are now at 62%, writers up to 55%, and directors still down at 49%, almost 50%. Apparently that's not close to being equal. Overall, 56% across all KPIs. Are you going to stop now and start approving projects on merit again?
We do approve projects on merit, Senator. That's absolutely the very first thing. The target is about tracking the projects in terms of who the key creatives are, and making sure that we've got that information as we're going through the year. The results of the target also change every year depending on the projects that come into us, because we don't commission projects, we can only respond to the applications that we receive.
Well, merit you say, but it's not really, is it? Because there's a line item in your account for recoupment of equity investment, REI, which is taxpayers getting a return on our money. If your investment decisions were being made on merit, your commercial returns would show that. I note your returns over the last 6 years on recoupment of equity investment has ranged from 12 to 32%. Some variation may occur as costs are in one year and returns are in another, so we understand that. Your numbers may be more accurate. Why did the projects you fund fail commercially so frequently, even when you've had a hit? The best year was only 32% of your money back.
It really depends on the project and how well, and they're subject obviously to global headwinds and the contraction in the global marketplace for screen content. It depends on the box office, if they're theatrical feature films in Australia, and it depends how well they sell internationally. Over the last couple of years, it's become much more difficult for projects to sell, certainly into the US, which used to be a much more stable market certainly for Australian content. It can't be relied on because of the contraction of some of the big media players there. It's very much subject to market conditions, and the market has changed significantly and continues to move fluidly, and that's not something we have any control over. Some projects do incredibly well. The feature film Talk to Me, which released a couple of years ago, has recouped many times over what its budget was.
Very good one.
Very good one. We want more like that. And there are things then that have perhaps a less commercially focused, but still play very well with audiences. So there's a real range of projects that we support, and a real range of returns, because the return on investment is not just about the commercial financial return, it's also a cultural return and influence return as well, in terms of is it something that's going to influence people to change their behaviour? Is it going to be... So we've got, there are different reasons that we watch the shows that we watch, that we go to see, films that we see, and our reactions to them and our behaviour as a result of that.
So I understand systems change behaviour, language changes behaviour. Could you tell me the behaviours you're seeking on behalf of the Australian taxpayer?
We're not
Because
seeking...
you're basically changing behaviours, which I understand. So what behaviours are you trying to change?
We're not trying to change behaviours. It will depend on the show. There may be documentaries that seek to give people a better understanding of a certain issue or group of people, and to have more empathy around things, or just understand their community better.
So is changing behaviour one of the criteria or one of the KPIs for selecting investment
No, it's
grants?
not.
Yeah. How do you do that then? How do you make sure they change behaviour?
That's not something that we can do. We don't distribute the shows. We don't market shows.
Oh, I thought you
And we
said
don't
you did.
commission shows.
Okay. A common measure of a hit screen production is one that returns 2.5 times its production cost. 2 times breaks even, including distribution, and the 0.5% on top of 2 is profit. By that measure, your last hit movie was the movie Talk to Me in 2022, which cost $4 million and returned a whopping $140 million. A great result, but it was unexpected for a small horror film. Nonetheless, a good result. It made your results for 2023-24 look good. The next previous hit we can see in your returns is Lion, way back in 2016. The Sapphires in 2012, Red Dog in 2011, which must have been a very big hit. That was a long time ago. Is this move to DEI in more recent years creating projects that people don't want to watch?
No.
In 2024-25, your total audience was 101.8 million, let's say 102 million. That's up from last year, but it's down on 2020-21 and 21-22, which was 140 million. So you're way down. That's almost 1/4 down. Now, I acknowledge that the platforms are changing form from theatre to streaming and now to TikTok. Can you provide an accurate figure for our audience each year over the last 5 years broken into screen, television, streaming and social media, please?
I'll have to take that on notice. Senator.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Your 2026-27 budget is $113 million, with $86 million from the taxpayers. What is your projection for grants and for recoupable investments in 26-27?
I'll ask my colleague to manage that.
Mark Reid, Chief Financial Officer. Our budget for 26-27 is actually the total expenditure for 26-27 on the budget statement, page 526 of the portfolio budget statement.
How much?
Is actually 95.9 million total expenses, and our recoupment budget for 26-27 is 3.8.
How much from taxpayers?
From taxpayers, we receive revenue from government of $86 million.
So that's the same.
Yep.
Okay. What's your projection for... No, that's fine. We've got figures of grants 34 million and recoupment of equity investment of 59 million.
You'd have to point to where you're... We do grants and equity investments. So for 26-27, we're projecting 34 million in grants and 33.6 in what we call the write-down and impairment of assets. That's the equity component that we provide to recipients.
So the first figure we agree on. What was the second figure?
34 and 33.6 in investments.
Thank you. Last question, Chair. If your primary objective is to fund Australian content, then the figure in your budget for grants, REIs, inflation adjusted, would go up each year, but it doesn't. Wages go up every year, but money going back into the industry is down. From a high in 2020 to 2021 of $99 million, which is $118 million in today's dollars, to $86 million. That's this year. Taxpayers are paying more and getting less out of Screen Australia. Why is that?
I'm not sure that I agree with the premise of your question, Senator, but taxpayers are paying less and we are delivering a lot for the Australian public.
Can you convince me that taxpayers are not paying more and getting less?
Your own figures were that in 2021 we were paying out $90 million and now we're paying out less. But Australian stories are being produced and watched at a very high rate.
But the figures don't reflect that, profit figures and the return.
As my colleague mentioned, Screen Australia does not make all of its decisions based on commercial return.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. If there are no further questions for Screen Australia, you go with the committee's thanks. Thank you very much for your evidence here today.
Thank you.
We will now call the department. Now, while the department's coming to the table, broadcasting, will you please suspend?
Good, thank you for getting a fee. Chair, if I might, we do have the Australian Sports Commission here with us.
We just had that.
We've just had this.
that. We're
Oh,
gonna
sorry. I now call officers for the department in relation to outcome 7, contribute to healthy, active communities and sustainable sports systems through policy development, coordination and targeted support. Program 7.1, sport and physical activity. And I will invite questions. Senator McKenzie.
Thank you. I've just got some questions about the Play Well strategy, which states on page 36, the ambition is to create sporting communities where everyone feels welcome and embraced, safe, fun, adaptable, and we will be ensuring the narrative that everyone has equitable access to sport. And I guess you will be aware of the ongoing debate in communities and at the international level about ensuring that women and girls have safe spaces to participate in sport, to compete, to develop confidence, to go on and enjoy participating in sport in whatever capacity they can. How do you reconcile the equitable access piece in the Play Well strategy with safe spaces for biological females?
Senator, Play Well is a program delivered by the Australian Sports Commission, so they might be better placed in their session.
Well, they've got a heads up on what my question is. Has the department changed policy or practice in response to the International Olympic Committee's recent decision to support biological females only sport competition? So whether in the pathways for elite athletes or obviously our investment and policy settings around increasing community sport participation.
So at the moment we continue to abide by existing legislation which has not changed, Australian law. I know that the Sports Commission are having a look at those issues as it relates to high performance sport, but at the moment we apply and in all of our grant programs require consistency with Australian legislation which doesn't allow discrimination.
So, sorry, not allowing discrimination in order to buy a coffee or employ someone is very different to providing protection and safe spaces for young girls and female sports participation. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive situations.
Senator Travis Haslam, First Assistant Secretary, Office for Sport. I note your question, but I'm not trying to be difficult here, but the Australian Sports Commission is leading that work with the sport sector in terms of consideration of the IOC's ruling, but also in terms of their work around working with the Australian Human Rights Commission and sporting organisations in relation to sport. So I might refer that question to the Commission.
So in terms of the government's policy settings around sport, that is all out-farmed and outsourced to the AIS?
Senator, I wouldn't characterise the government's policy as being outsourced to the AIS.
Well, it sounds like the Office of Sport. What do you do?
We do a lot of things,
because right now
Senator.
the grants are being delivered by the AIS. They're also doing a body of work in response to international changes in sport regulation. I ask a policy question, which is about all that's left outside of politics, which is the minister's space. What do you guys do, and girls?
So at the moment the policy has not changed. The policy is to be consistent with the legislation, but there are obviously grant programs around retaining women in sport, women's change rooms, etc. But I do accept your point that there are women and people who identify as female and the issues that come with that. I think the policies have not changed yet, but I know that there is work underway to consider the implications of the IOC's position.
So my question for the department is that work sitting with the AIS, or is any work going on within the department?
Senator, that work is led by the Australian Sports Commission, given both the Play Well participation strategy that they lead working with national sporting organisations and other sporting bodies, and likewise from a high performance perspective, the Win Well strategy as well. So they'll be better placed in terms of their engagement at the grassroots. The department doesn't deliver those programs directly with sporting organisations. The department does deliver the Play Our Way grant program for women and girls, the $200 million program in terms of what we do.
And that's the change room program?
It's both infrastructure as well as programs, Senator.
And is there anything within that program that highlights the need for women and girls to have safe spaces to play sport?
Senator, the entire program is built around ensuring greater participation by women and girls, both in terms of from an infrastructure perspective as well as participation and equipment. It's focused on ensuring greater access given disadvantage, and that includes both from a regional perspective, from a financial perspective and an access perspective. And there's 290 grants that are being delivered through that program nationally.
Okay, thank you. Well, I might have some questions on notice about that one. I hadn't checked that grant program out.
Thank you, Senator.
Looks like my questions, which I thought were split, are all going to the AIS.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie.
Oh, actually, sorry. So is there a time frame that government's given the AIS to finish their work?
No, there's no specific
advice?
time frame, Senator, no.
Or is that up to them to decide? Has the Minister requested this be finished in...
No, there's been no specific time frame put on it.
I think, Senator, if it's helpful, I think there's significant work to be done given the IC has made a statement and in terms of the implications around implementation and all of those issues are still being worked through. So to my understanding, there hasn't been a time frame set, but it's being looked at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Senator Henson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Look, I just wanted to pick up on Senator McKenzie's questions about single-sex sport and the funding of single-sex sporting infrastructure. And when you say that you're operating according to the legislation is fairly vexed at the moment. So we've had the tickle and giggle decision handed down. That is likely to go to appeal to the High Court. We've also had a different interpretation of the legislation, arguably, in relation to the action by the Lesbian Action Group. And of course, there are circumstances where sporting organisations can quite lawfully maintain exemptions in relation to single-sex sporting facilities. So when you say you are complying with the legislation, I'm really seeking clarity. What are you actually complying with?
So when we provide grants to organisations, whether they be sporting organisations or community groups, under Play Our Way program, which is our sort of program to create more sporting opportunities for women, they are required to comply with the law, which is including the Sex Discrimination Act, which means you can't discriminate on the basis, obviously, of sex, gender identity, intersex status, and so on. And that includes clubs and administration of Commonwealth programs. So that's as far as we can require them to go at the moment. If those laws can be questioned in the court, and the courts can apply an interpretation.
So are we able to have a copy of your guidelines? How are they embodied, these guidelines?
They're online?
Yeah, the grant program was published, both the guidelines as well as the outcomes of applications in terms of the successful applications and the details in terms of, the criteria applied, Senator.
So the Sex Discrimination Act contains exemptions which allow biological sex to be recognised, so single-sex playing or sporting facilities where competitive sporting advantage or safety issues arise. So could you expand on the Commonwealth's position when you are funding sports which fit into that category?
Senator, the Play Our Way program is largely a participation-based program rather than a high-performance program, noting the information you've just provided. I believe, going back to earlier comments, the Commission would be better to be in a better position to advise in relation to high-performance sport and that environment.
But the exemption doesn't just relate to high-performance sport. It relates to competitive sport. And so, look, I guess if you are, let's just use an example, if you are funding women's change rooms for a local footy club, is there any issue if the club determines that they will reserve those change rooms for girls, meaning the biological sex definition of girls?
Yeah, we would not govern that. That would be a decision of that, and I don't think that would that would disqualify them for our grants if they were doing that on a safety basis consistent with the law.
So you would require the club to operate consistent with the law, even though the law is very uncertain. Have you got any guidelines where you provide those to sporting organisations, to clubs?
Only the guidelines that are associated with the grant. There's not additional guidelines.
Yeah, go.
Sorry.
We'll just take
And it's my
yeah.
poor team. They'll be bringing the guidelines up for Stream 1, I think. So I obviously left them on my desk. So obviously Play Our Way, the guidelines for Stream 1 refer to providing safe, inclusive, quality and sustainable facilities. When you are defining what inclusive is, does inclusive allow biological males, transgender women into female change rooms at a community level?
Senator, if I may, my colleague Mr Perrott has located the guidelines, and I think one of the key things we'd point to in terms of the actual grant agreement is the National Principles for Child Safe Organisations and the Commonwealth Child Safe Framework. So in terms of your question around meeting those specifically, those are published as part of it to describe the environment that's required.
Well, that still doesn't answer my question.
Senator,
Does inclusive, when you are assessing under your guidelines inclusivity, does that assume that biological males, transgender women are able to enter female change rooms?
Senator, that wasn't part of the assessment of a grant guideline, the hypothetical that you're putting to me, and it's not something that I've assessed.
Well, it's not a hypothetical out there, okay? In community land outside of Canberra, it's not a hypothetical at all. We want sport to be inclusive of all, but we also need it to be allowing for safe spaces for females as well. The guidelines also, just wondering if the department has consulted women's sporting organisations, parents, female athletes or safeguarding experts regarding concerns about biological males accessing girls and women change rooms at the community level.
The department has not. The department did consult in relation to the development of the Play Our Way program specifically.
Yep.
But in terms of your question, I took that as a general
it was very
request.
specific.
Yeah.
Yep.
In terms of the Play Our Way, absolutely, there was consultation with leading women and girls as an example about what works from an inclusion perspective. We took advice as an example from a number of leading female athletes, as well as working closely with the Commission and a range of other government bodies in developing those guidelines. But
parents?
I don't recall, Senator. I don't recall whether their parents were consulted.
Thank you. Under Play Our Way guidelines, women and girls are identified as the main or exclusive focus of funded activities, which is fantastic. How does the department ensure those facilities continue to provide safe and private spaces, specifically for biological women and girls? I mean, we build them, and one of the criteria we actually built into a previous grant program was that you actually had to show it increased participation over and above, not just head count, but movement, to actually try and improve community participation and have a plan for how you are going to do that. How are you assuring the community groups and the taxpayer that these facilities will be safe spaces for women and girls after they're built? Is there something in the contract?
Yes, there is, Senator. One of the
because we've all seen them built and then the boys come in and take over.
And that was a key consideration.
But we can only use them on a Tuesday night.
There was certainly part of the consideration in developing the program, again, working with leading female athletes and a wide range of sources around what needed to change to make sure that type of scenario didn't continue to occur, such as a facility being built but women only getting access from the worst training times.
That's
as an
right,
example.
never on a Saturday.
Yeah. So that was a key consideration in building the grant criteria, and grant awarding was informed by policies and procedures and strategies about that fair and equitable access. For example, how they would develop fair and equitable access to training competition times. There was a big focus on safety in terms of elements of that and opening up new opportunities. But one of the things that we've done as part of this grant program, Senator, is for the facilities stream, there's, following the completion of it, even outside once the grant has been finished, there's a 3-year period where we can still require information from them to follow up to make sure it's been maintained, because that was clearly a core issue.
A flying change room squad. Yes, I like it. Checking change rooms. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't laugh. But I think this is really good work. I do think it's important, because selling Mars bars to build your... gets very frustrating and expensive. Has the department provided any advice to national or state sporting associations regarding how to balance having inclusive policies for transgender athletes and participants with the privacy and dignity rights of women and girls?
The department hasn't, Senator. I'd probably refer back to the broader role of the Commission in terms of that advice.
Are sporting organisations at risk of losing Commonwealth funding or grant eligibility if they choose to maintain female-only change rooms based on biological sex? Mr Perrott, you're the expert in this area, I would assume, looking after the grant program.
Yes, Senator Greg Perrott, Assistant Secretary of Policies and Programs, yes, we looked after Play Away. I think the closest we get to your answer is that a lot of the evidence that informed whether grants were successful or not was evidence of community need. So your question about surveying at local level parents, that sort of thing, came through in applications of evidence of consulting local communities and what was important in those local communities in terms of things like safety, any barriers to participation of women and girls in sport. So the grants that were successful were often the ones that had evidence of that consultation. The other thing is that in terms of things like equitable access policies to address the issue you were raising before, we've insisted on those being published. So there's a self-regulation aspect to it. What communities themselves see as important is what the clubs effectively make themselves, clubs and organisations then make themselves accountable for. So if it means that the communities themselves drive what is the most important issue for them in terms of breaking down those barriers.
So there's no box to tick, there's no I confirm this complies with. Do they have to state?
There are in terms of
open to all, and like I'm assuming, given what I understand of your guidelines and the program and this discussion, and that it's based on law, that a club won't be able to say this is a single sex, but for biological females only, and still retain their funding.
There's nothing specifically about Play Away one way or the other. On the precision of the law that you're talking about is beyond Play Away, and I don't have any comment.
Okay. Interesting.
This is where the law is vexed, because under sections 23 and 37 of the Sex Discrimination Act, providers of these, say, change rooms, women's change rooms, can, in some circumstances, lawfully provide separate facilities based on sex, particularly where privacy, decency or special measures are relevant. And so it depends on the circumstances. The law is not definitive. So I guess Ms Rota, I just want to ask you, has there been any situation where the Commonwealth, in respect of single-sex facilities, has the Commonwealth intervened at any point in time in relation to the provision of single-sex facilities for biological women and girls only?
Senator, not that I'm aware of within the bounds of the work of the Office for Sport, no.
Has anyone sought guidelines, any organisation sought guidelines from you as to whether the funding is contingent on opening up, say, women and girls only facilities to people who are transgender?
Not from the Office for Sport, no.
So you don't have a policy which requires single-sex change rooms to include transgender people as well?
No, no, we don't have a policy on that, no.
Right, so when you say you comply with the law depends on the circumstances. It's very vexed.
Completely understand that,
I think the law needs to change, but putting that to one side, it's very hard if your guidelines say you've got to comply with the law. Well, the law is just not clear. And the law can operate differently depending on the circumstances of the particular issue at hand.
Yeah, completely understand that it's a very complicated area. And our grant programs are designed for a specific objective, which was to increase, as Mr Haslam said, women's participation in sport and to increase the numbers and the retention of women in sport. I don't think we, at the time of designing that program, went down to the level of specifying that level of detail.
Can I ask how many, as I recall, these are incredibly oversubscribed by a factor of 13, and you wish you could fund them all. How many applications did you get for Stream 1?
Senator, I have the total number across both, and that was 1,600. I don't have the breakdown in front of me of the two, of Stream 1 versus Stream 2.
Okay, if I could get that on notice, because for all those playing along at home, Stream 1 was about facilities and Stream 2 was about equipment.
Participation and equipment.
Yep.
Okay, so I did find the answer. See, this is why it pays to actually read the docs. So how many? We had 1,600 applications.
Yes, Senator.
And how many awarded?
292. Senator, I would note in relation to the number of applications, in relation to Stream 1, again, about infrastructure, there was a two-phase process. We were following guidance in terms of grant good practice, given the amount of work that goes into an infrastructure-type grant application. The first phase was to apply against the criteria, and then those formed a second group that were invited to apply again to make sure that, given there is a...
So kind of an expression of interest, this is the vibe, and then passes the pub test, and away we go with a more detailed application.
Slightly more direct than that, but yes, Senator.
Sorry, let's just truncate the discussion. Okay, so a very small amount of applicants actually were successful. How did you prioritise, out of the 1,600 applicants, the successful grant recipients?
Senator, I might refer to Mr Perrott, but I would note part of the process I identified before in relation to demonstrating how their policies and procedures would give that fair and equitable access, that commitment to equity, such as including, training times, access, etc., as well as clearly the criteria that was provided as part of the program. But that was inbuilt from the start. Mr Perrott, was there anything else?
That totals just 18% of applicants were successful. They used to, and so the 82% of applicants who weren't successful, were they not worthy projects of funding?
Senator, I wouldn't necessarily say there weren't projects that are worthy, but I'm not sure of too many grant programs that ever aren't oversubscribed, especially in a sporting context, which was part of the reason why, from an infrastructure perspective, there was 2 phases to make sure that it wasn't onerous on individuals if they didn't have, for example, all of the support they needed, including partnerships with their local community, or able to look at other co-funding streams or other priorities as well.
Did the Minister seek additional funding given the demand out there?
Senator, I think at the time the Minister acknowledged that it was both the largest specific program for women and girls ever delivered, but also that there was always going to be additional demands on a grant program.
So what a minister does when you have this sort of situation is you go knocking on the door of the Treasurer's office and say, buddy, I need some more money for this. There is clearly a demand out there that's being unmet. My question wasn't, as your answer, my question was, did your minister go and seek some additional funding to meet the unmet demand?
I can't answer on behalf of the Minister if she sought further funding.
Do you know if the Sports Minister sought additional funding around this extremely popular program?
It was an extremely popular program. It's the biggest investment in women's
talking
sport.
point's already been delivered.
And that's why we're delivering it. But seriously, Senator Mackenzie,
we don't need to.
We're not going to take
tonight,
lectures
Senator
from you
Green.
about how to administer sports programs.
Well, I went and asked for more money from my Treasurer and my Prime Minister.
And then you used a colour-coded spreadsheet.
Yes.
And then you did use a colour-coded spreadsheet.
That's fact. At least mine had colours on it.
That's not how we do.
So
that's not how we deliver.
Senator, I'm not
funding for
here to have a
sport.
fight.
I'm not either, but we're not going to take lectures from you about how to deliver sports funding.
I'm not coming to Senate estimates to be abused by government ministers.
All right, Senators.
I've asked a question and I would like it answered.
Okay.
Instead of copying personal attacks.
Well, hold on a minute. This works both ways, and I appreciate the point you're making, but equally when I'm speaking, please don't interrupt me either. Sure. What we're going to do from here is a phrase I've used, I think, close to 100 times in the last 4 days, which is question and answer. Let's keep it in that format. We'll go back to that. Are you aware of the question Senator Mackenzie asked? If not, will you please repeat it?
I'm going to dispute that.
No, we know
that's
that.
a reflection on me.
No, it wasn't a reflection on you.
Minister, did Minister Wells seek additional funding to support this highly successful program in this budget?
This is the biggest investment in women's sport participation, and that's why we're delivering this funding.
No or yes, and she was unsuccessful.
Well,
sorry, Senator Mackenzie, this does also work both ways, so please let the Minister answer.
It's the same talking point. I've heard 3 times.
I'm also not going to
all right.
go into
We've just done this once before. I'm going to say it once more.
Yeah.
Please, when I'm speaking, my job here is to maintain order. Please don't talk over the top of me. But when we are doing this, we will go back and forth. So when the Minister is giving her answer and she hadn't gone very long, she's entitled to give that answer, and then you're entitled to ask the next question.
If it's helpful, Senator Mackenzie, there's no additional funding for this program in this budget, but we're continuing to roll out the projects that we have funded.
Thank you, Minister. That's very, very helpful. So how we were going to how these were prioritised? The 18% that got funded?
So, yes, the starting point is evidence that the proposal being put forward is going to break down barriers for women and girls. So that's the starting point of the logic. There were some structural distribution things put in there, right? So there was a priority on regional and remote communities, priority on women and girls with a disability, First Nations. There were several priority cohorts. So what we...
did you give a weighting to those?
We did, yes. There were two...
Could you just walk me through the weightings? Because I've got them here, they're on page 16.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
So First Nations, culturally and linguistically diverse, disability, rural and regional Australia, low socioeconomic area, tick, 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 identify as belonging to the LGBTIQA plus community. I would like the weightings, and that, as I see it, they're the assessment criteria prioritisation.
They're part of it. I misunderstood your question. They didn't have a specific mechanical weighting. However, there was a scoring process as a first pass.
Yep.
So we had a large assessment team assessing every grant and moderation over the top. At that point,
sometimes.
At that point, basically, all else being equal, if a grant was for a regional area, it would have scored higher than a grant for a city proposal, for example. Then when it came to the committee, we did structure our decision making to make sure that we were aware of those priority cohorts, and we did several checkpoints. Now, as it turned out, the committee didn't need to adjust its decision making much at all. This is written up in some detailed assessment reports, committee reports at the end. But the point was the scoring did the job. So when we looked at the distribution of the highest scoring grants at the end, it met those requirements. So we were happy with how it shook out. I probably should also add that a key part of this was it turned out that the program must have been promoted well. So we got applications from all over Australia. We got a good diversity of applications, so that made our job as a committee much easier. We didn't need to go looking for good examples of proposals within each of those cohorts.
So your guidelines are quite, we want, there's a 6,000 character limit for assessment criteria 1, etc., and you go through there. I'm interested in the weighting for your assessment criteria, and then I'm also interested in the weighting for these priority populations, because that suggests that if it's not in these priority populations, we won't even bother going through the assessment criteria of 1,600 applications. So if these are your priority populations, is that kind of the first sift?
No. The first sift is, does this look like a proposal that's actually going to make a difference based on evidence of community need?
So do you have the maths? I want the maths. I want assessment criteria, 20% weighting, assessment criteria 2, 15.
There will be some elements of that. They'll be complicated. I think the document we're going to have to dig up to answer your question.
I studied maths at university. I'm sure
all I mean is I can't remember the steps off the top of my head. I think what we have to dig up are the detailed instructions for the assessors, because that will show the decision-making process that they went through.
So I'm interested in the weighting, and I'm interested in what the priority populations weighting has had.
Yes, we'll have to take that on notice, okay, but within that document I'm talking about, there'll be a...
Take it on notice, that's fine. Thank you. Now my staff's running in, so I'm worried they're giving me another batch for you. Simon, stop.
Senator Mackenzie.
No.
Sorry, Senator Henderson. I apologise.
Look, I just am seeking, Ms. Ryler, some clarity in relation to these vexed issues. Happy for the Minister to address the questions if that's appropriate. But does the government support female-only change rooms and sporting facilities based on biological sex?
We don't have a written policy, as far as I'm aware, on that issue. So I would either have to take it on notice or refer to the Minister as to the government's policy position, but we don't have a stated policy on that as such.
So do you have a policy which explicitly protects female-only sporting spaces? I'm talking about biological female-only sporting spaces.
Senator, there is not a specific policy as you've articulated. What there is, as I referred to earlier, a range of safeguarding principles. There's work that the Commission does in terms of sport itself and working with national sporting organisations. And there is, the ongoing engagement around safeguarding and discrimination that is done by Sport Integrity Australia, the Australian Sports Commission, but also our implementation of government policy in relation to these broader programs that we've talked about. So I don't think the specificity of what you're saying, there's no policy in relation to that, to my awareness.
So has the government issued guidance or has there been any recent correspondence in relation to protecting female-only change rooms and amenities?
I'm
No.
not aware of any recent correspondence. I'd have to take that on notice,
Or if you could
Senator.
take it on notice, please. Does the government accept that many women and girls are uncomfortable sharing change rooms with biological males?
We're certainly aware of the issues that have been raised in various mediums, yeah.
Has the government assessed the impact of gender identity policies on women's privacy and safety in sport? So has there been any consideration of these matters by the
Office of
department?
Sport. Not by the Office of Sport, Senator.
So does the office believe biological sex remains relevant in access to intimate sporting spaces? Talking about bathrooms and change rooms.
Senator, I don't think that's a policy position by the Office of Sport. The government has broader policy, as I've indicated before in my previous answer.
So the International Olympic Committee has recognised the importance of biological sex in elite sport. Why won't the government specifically recognise the importance of biological sex in sport?
I can't answer that question on behalf of government, Senator. All I can say is refer to the answers that Mr Haslam gave before, which is where the Australian Sports Commission is working with the Human Rights Commission and others to develop a position on these issues following the IOC's position.
Okay, so the IOC's position is significant and influential?
Yes.
Because the issue is, Ms Ryder, how can women and girls thrive in community sport, which may lead to elite sport, if they're forced to compete against biological boys or men?
Senator, again, I'd go back to not being difficult. Our answer at the start is the ISC process. They've made a statement. We acknowledge that the Australian Sports Commission is working through the complexity of that issue. And in terms of their questions, they'd be better placed to advise that work because we're not conducting that work ourselves.
I appreciate that, and we will be pursuing those questions, but the IOC has made more than just a statement. They have made a very significant policy decision that biological men are not permitted to compete against women and girls.
I don't think that's dissimilar from the Sex Discrimination Act as it stands. There's an exemption there for competitive sport, which we took you through earlier. No, but competitive sport. But the Senator was talking about the IOC decision.
Well, the IOC, up until very recently, Minister, has actually allowed biological men to compete at the Olympics.
And that's why the AEC is looking at the decision.
And that's been a matter of great controversy. And my concern is if girls cannot compete against girls in community sport, in state-based sport, how can they successfully progress to elite sport? When they're put in a situation, there are many instances where girls are denied the opportunity. There was one young girl in Melbourne denied the opportunity to compete in a regional athletics competition because she was beaten by a biological boy, a boy who identified as a girl. So
I hear your issues, Senator.
Yes.
I think it's a bigger, long-term issue that needs to be worked through and
women,
not something that we can answer on tonight.
We really want, and I think most Australians would want to see women and girls thrive in sport, and community sport plays a fundamental role as a pathway to elite sport, but also just to general health and well-being. So if I can just ask you, has Commonwealth funding been used for projects replacing female-only facilities with inclusive or gender-neutral spaces?
Not at this point, no.
So none of those projects?
Well, Senator, there's 292 programs.
There are.
In terms of individual design specifications for bathrooms within those, I can't comment on that.
I would like you to take that on notice.
Happy to try and take that on notice based on what we have around the individual infrastructure.
Thank
So,
you, because that goes to the heart of what's happening out there.
So can a community sporting organisation be guaranteed that if they make their girls only or women's only facilities available to biological women and girls, can they be guaranteed that there won't be any repercussions under their funding agreements?
Senator, I think we answered that before, which was on the grounds that it is consistent with law, no, there would be no repercussions.
Well, but
I
Ms.
get
Rowder,
your
as we
questions
also
about
discussed before,
the interpretation of the law,
the
but if
law-
it's on a safety basis, there is exceptions in that legislation around safety, and so therefore there would be no repercussions on that basis.
the law is vexed and very contested.
Understand that.
It's actually had pretty long-term bipartisan support, the SDA. So it's had long-standing bipartisan support.
Minister, I would profoundly disagree with you on that.
Well, that's okay. I mean, this
and
is.
so-
Do you
and
want
I
me?
think-
I mean, this is this is an explanation of how the SDA deals with sport. The Australian government recognises that individuals may be recognised within the community as a gender other than the sex that they were assigned at birth or during infancy, or as a gender which is not exclusively male or female. In relation to competitive sport activity, the Sex Discrimination Act provides that it is not unlawful discrimination on the grounds of sex, gender identity or intersex status to exclude a person from participating in competitive sport in which strength, stamina and physique of competitors is relevant. That's a quote from Senator Cash when she was the Attorney General in 2021.
Well, we've now had the decision in Giggle and Tiggle.
I'm just saying it's had long-standing bipartisan support.
So the interpretation of the Sex Discrimination Act, as interpreted by the full federal court, has now determined that the rights of women and girls have effectively been
that the law has
subverted.
changed. I think the Liberal Party
And
has.
no, please don't reflect on any political party.
just-
I can tell you from every part of the political spectrum, Minister, this is a matter of great controversy. I sat in this Parliament.
You said that the law is contested, and I said it has had long-standing bipartisan support.
No, well,
Court's ruling.
I think what you're overlooking, Minister, is that we have just had the full federal court decision in the Giggle and Tickle case, which has interpreted the Sex Discrimination Act in a way that has shocked many Australians. And so we've made a commitment, our party, to amend the Sex Discrimination Act. We believe it should be amended to protect the rights of women and girls based on biological sex under certain circumstances. But anyway, let me just finish my questions in relation to sporting facilities. So has the office obtained any legal advice in relation to preserving women and girls only sporting facilities for biological women and girls? Has there been any advice obtained?
No, we have not obtained legal advice.
Minister, I'll direct this to you. Has the government considered any amendments to clarify protections for women's single-sex spaces in sporting environments?
Not beyond what's already in the Sex Discrimination Act that was amended in 2013, supported by the Coalition at the time, actually recommended by Coalition senators and a minority senator's report.
So has the government undertaken any safeguarding or risk assessment in relation to mixed sex change room policies in junior sport?
We have not in the Office of Sport, Senator, no.
No, you haven't done that?
Your policy, not ours.
No, I'm asking about your policy, Minister, and whether the Office of Sport has undertaken. So, Ms Rodder, just going back to the point that you are seeking to work with the ASC in relation to developing further policies. So can I infer from that you believe that further policy clarity is required to better protect women and girls competing in community or junior sport?
Senator, you're asking for a personal opinion, which is not something I can give you. What I'm saying is this is an issue that is clearly prevalent across the community and something that the Australian Sports Commission is working on.
Yep. All right, thank you very much. Chair, I'm sorry, I do have a few other questions. Apologise.
Okay, we're about 3 minutes from a break. If you're changing topic, I'm happy to let you keep going to the break.
Yeah, Look, why don't we have a break and then I'll quickly come back and just address my other questions.
Okay, we're going to now break for 15 minutes for our evening tea, and we will be back after that. Thank you very much. outcome 7.1. Who am I going to? Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to turn briefly to media reports that families are cutting back on their children playing sport due to cost of living impacts on families. Are you able to make any comment in relation to those reports, Ms Rauter? Have you seen any data to support that, or have you examined this reported trend?
Senator, I haven't seen any data in relation to that. I have seen a media article that did refer to that on the impact in particular around regional and rural people. However, in the same way that the geopolitical situation and rising fuel costs are impacting a whole range of ways of life, sport is not immune to that.
Are you investigating these issues? Is the government planning any action to give families better support who are in that position, particularly families in rural and regional and remote areas who have to travel long distances to take their children to sport?
I can't speak specifically on broader government policy, but from a sport perspective, I'm not undertaking any additional work in that regard at the moment in terms of from a data perspective that you point to, Senator.
Okay, so you haven't seen, or the department doesn't have any data in relation to participation rates? So you're not seeing any trend that it's increasing or stagnating?
No, Senator.
Do you have any data on participation rates? I imagine you do, of course.
Certainly. The Australian Sports Commission runs the AusPlay survey that tracks sporting participation. And I'm sure they'd be able to talk to you about participation rates more broadly. But I think the cycle of how often that data is taken wouldn't necessarily respond to the current issue that you're pointing to.
And Senator, there was also in the 26-27 budget context, 50.5 million provided for the sporting schools and participation grant programs.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Not a problem. 50.5 million was provided in the 26-27 budget for the continuation of the sporting schools program to enable school-aged children to participate in sport.
All right, thank you very much. Just wanted to briefly ask about the Football Australia's request for $50 million to establish a national football headquarters. Does the government have a position in relation to that? Has there been any work or examination of that proposal being undertaken?
Senator, I understand Football Australia made a proposal to government, but there wasn't any funding in the budget for Football Australia for a facility.
And that was a $50 million request, was it? Budget request?
I'll have to take that on notice, exactly the composition of that request, but I'm aware Football Australia were interested certainly in a new home of football. I think the government had previously invested in a women's home of football in relation to the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2023, but Football Australia's request was a different one following that investment.
So the federal budget contained funding of $20 million for the Leichhardt Oval in Sydney, which I understand is in the Prime Minister's electorate. So what was that for? Was that for football, meaning soccer?
Yeah, I think it's important, despite the Saints' Force game 5 versus 50.
I think we might take that on notice, Senator. I think that's actually funded under a different program that we would have had information for under Outcome 3. So I can take it on notice for you and come back to you on that one. I don't think it was funded through sport programs. It was funded through another regional program or urban program.
Right. So can I just could I just ask you also to?
It just rings a bell, and I think it's in my other
like
the other day folder,
suburbs or something
like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many other sporting ovals have received funding to that sort of level in the budget? So
again, I'd have to take it on notice. Across all of our election commitment programs in particular, there is a very high level of funding that goes to sporting. Sometimes it's not for a whole oval, sometimes it might be lighting, sometimes it might be change rooms, sometimes it might be other bits and pieces. But there is a very high percentage of those commitments that go to sport. There's also other grants out of thriving suburbs, growing regions that also go to sport. So I'd have to take it on notice to give
All
you
right,
that
if you
level
could,
of
I'd be
detail.
most grateful. Thank you very much, and Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, on that basis, I excuse the officials of the department with the committee's thanks for your evidence and the work that goes into it. I call the Australian Sports Commission. Welcome, Mr. Perkins. Do you wish, and to your team as well, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Thank you, Chair. No opening statement from the Commission today.
All right, in which case we'll proceed to questions. Who would like the Senator McKenzie?
Thank you so much, and great to see you, Mr. Perkins and Mr. Hughes. Obviously, we won't see you before our team heads off to Glasgow, so on behalf of the National Party in particular, but obviously the federal opposition and the entire Australian Senate, we wish our athletes and our officials all the very best for a successful Games. Again, you heard the comments I made earlier, given the International Olympics Committee's much welcomed, long-awaited decision to have restricting the eligibility for the female category at Olympic competition level to biological females. What discussions has the ASC had with our AOC and as a result of the IOC's decision?
Senator, thank you for your question. Kieran Perkins, CEO of the Sports Commission. That's a fabulous question. I would say the only discussion that I'm aware of that we've had with the AOC is to acknowledge that the IOC has created a position.
Sorry, when you say created a position, has a policy position or changed? Sorry, I missed what you said.
The internet. So I have had a conversation with the CEO of the Australian Olympic Committee, Mark Arbib, recognising the IOC's stated position.
Yep.
We have not, however, had any detailed discussions on the specifics or any response.
And so has that been discussed with your board, the AOC's decision, and whether that will, and the IOC's decision, and that will have any flow-on impact for the ASC and the development of our athlete pipeline?
We have had a conversation at the board level, Senator, yes.
And so what was the decision of the board? Have they tasked you with any specific work?
They have. I think it's appropriate for me to start by just clarifying in the conversation that has happened thus far. While the IOC has made a stated position about how they intend to run the qualification of female athletes at the Los Angeles Olympics and beyond. At this point in time, there is no actual stated operational policy, and the IOC's decision has no bearing on the law or operation of any sporting activities that occur within the country of Australia. And so the work that we've been tasked to do by the board is to understand how we might support our elite female athletes who are qualifying or likely to qualify for the Australian Olympic team to compete at the Los Angeles Olympics, might be able to navigate the IOC's stated policy.
Okay, and when are you hoping to finalise that work? Because you can't I was going to say fatten a pig on market day, but that's my line of work. You can't create an elite athlete in sort of 6 weeks.
So, Senator, I would say it's important. The context of your question suggests that there is something about the IOC's policy which has a bearing on our capacity or ability to develop elite athletes and deliver them onto the international stage, and I would contest it has absolutely zero bearing. It makes no difference whatsoever to the operation of our elite programs, the performance pipeline, the support network, all of the things that we do in this country continue on as is, and will no doubt continue to lead to the outcome which you have seen at more recent and probably historic Olympic Games, where actually our females regularly and completely outperform their male counterparts on the team. And so at this point in time, we're not particularly
on the track.
We're not particularly worried about the pipeline and capability of our female athletes. What we are looking into and needing to navigate is that those athletes who do intend to or do qualify for the Games will need at some point to navigate the IOC's policy. As it stands right now, there is no information on how the IOC intends to operationalise this, how they intend to enable testing, pay for testing, provide support to athletes who live in countries where that testing may or may not actually be legal to undertake on the basis of being coerced by a third party, and on it goes. And so actually at this point in time, we're in no hurry whatsoever, because we could navel gaze at the issue around how we might actually set up a support to respond. But until we actually know how the IOC intends to operationalise this policy, there's too many unknowns.
Is it only the IOC that has this policy? Other international sporting...
There are other international federations that have already instituted this, and I did have a list here somewhere which I may or may not be able to find.
Rowing?
Could be. Athletics is one, I do know.
Aquatics?
Yes, aquatics is one.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Apologies, I can't find the list at the moment. I do know I have one here, though.
World boxing?
Surely rugby.
World boxing?
Yes.
that was
World rugby?
Thank you. You've got the list you already know.
Have you?
Cool.
I'm just...
There we go.
International Cycling Union.
Thank you for...
I have the list.
You really do need to just...
Thank you for helping me with the answer, Senator. I do
She's
appreciate
so
it.
helpful. She asks the questions and answers them.
So the answer that I'm aware of is cricket, rugby union, swimming, cycling, athletics, netball, ski and snowboard, boxing and rugby league.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, so my questions were around eligibility frameworks and what work's being done that, but you're leaving that with the IOC and awaiting them to...
It is, yes.
Yeah, you're going to have to, but given the
same...
number of other international federations who are also... Have they developed pathways and frameworks around how to sort of get your female athletes onto the...
Senator, I can't answer that. I would need to take that on notice to look at the policies of the individual sports. What I do know is that there has been instances already where we have supported Australian female athletes to test the Athletics World Championships last year. In fact, I might hand over to Dr Hughes if I may, because he did that work, so he knows the answer.
We've got the expert in the room.
Thank you, Kieran. David Hughes, Chief Medical Officer. To the best of my knowledge, there's only 2 international federations that have operationalised testing, and that's World Boxing and World Athletics. I think the other sports...
Using the same test, Dr Hughes?
Yes.
Right. And is that the same test that's been adopted by the IOC?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so we sort of have some uniformity.
Yes. Yep.
Helpful. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Has the government or the department your board has tasked you with a piece of work? Has the Office of Sport or the government tasked the ASC with any work in this regard around biological female sport participation? So when the department was talking about analysis of the Sex Discrimination Act, etc., or the human rights, was that work that they've asked the ASC to do, or that's something your board's generated, or has that come from within the organisation?
I should take this opportunity, Senator, just to clarify that we actually haven't briefed the Office for Sport yet on the work that we are doing, and I think their information was incomplete. So at this point in time, there is no work to test or challenge Australian law. We are purely addressing this on the basis of how do we support our athletes who might need to undergo the testing to compete internationally for our country. As far as I'm aware, the law in Australia has not changed, and the implementation of that remains. And so we have not, the department nor the minister has spoken to us about this or tasked us with any activity in that regard.
So the AIS doesn't have a public position statement endorsing... Oh, sorry, you do? You have endorsed the AIC's decision? No, you've noted it.
We've recognised it.
Yes, that's
we've understood they've provided a position.
Yes. Do you think it's sustainable for athletes to train under one set of domestic rules but compete internationally under another?
Yes. Senator, I'm not sure where the conflict is.
So, just that there's a separate rule system, but you're saying that is something that can be easily managed in the Australian context. That's my question. It's a genuine question. You're the expert. Has the AIS reviewed implications for female-only training environments, change rooms and athlete accommodation settings?
No, Senator.
Have you sought legal advice about whether domestic inclusion policies conflict with international eligibility rules?
No, Senator.
What consultation has occurred with female athletes regarding fairness, safety, privacy implications arising from the IOC changes?
I'm not aware that there's been any, Senator.
Sorry, Dr. Hughes is aware.
I have presented on this topic to the Australian Olympic Committee Athletes Commission.
When did you do that, Dr. Hughes?
In the last fortnight.
Okay, thank you. And what did you present?
Basically, what the testing is, what the testing involves, what are the potential harms of testing.
Yep.
If someone were to get a positive test, what that would mean for them, which is can be quite profound. And so the need to have appropriate education, access to counselling, access to mental health support around that testing. So while we don't control what the IOC does, we see our job as controlling the ethical framework in which testing might occur.
And so is there a role for integrity?
No, I don't think so.
Sport integrity? No.
That's to do with people who are cheating. No one here is cheating. We're just
No. But that's why the education piece is so important, I would imagine.
So that's right. So education has to happen beforehand.
Yeah.
And the individuals, we need to make sure that was someone unlucky enough to get a positive test, that they were fully aware beforehand, they consented, knowing all the potential ramifications of getting a positive test, and that we ensure that they had access to pre-test and post-test counselling and to mental health support.
Yep, okay. How can we ensure and support state-based sporting organisations have policies in place that provide safe spaces for young women and girls to compete and train without fear of an unfair playing field?
So, Senator, there is obviously, in the context of Australian law, numerous different avenues where those of us who exist and live and operate in Australia are to provide safe environments to ensure that especially children are taken care of. So there is no unique circumstance where sport is separate to society or different, that we don't have to comply with what every other Australian needs to comply with. And as such, I'm not aware of any work being done to make that different.
A state-based organisation have a similar attitude to you, to the ASC?
I'm I'm sorry,
Like,
Senator,
I understand what the ASC's view is.
Follow the law.
No, my understanding is that state-based organisations, because there are different regimes within different states, not everybody, they're not completely uniform across the country, and that's why I asked about different states. But your evidence is that the state-based sporting organisations are actually providing the safe spaces for young women and girls to participate.
Senator, my expectation is that they are complying with the law. I could not make any statement on whether they actually are or not, as I'm not a regulator or a police force to test those things.
Is there a forum where the state-based sporting organisations meet with the ASC or the AIS?
Yes, there would be.
I would hope so.
Yeah, that's a real...
I'm literally...
Yeah, so our responsibility and role is with the NSOs. There are circumstances... And the reason why I paused at that is because, Senator, for instance, you recently, in the previous session, mentioned the Play Well strategy.
Yep.
The Play Well strategy is a national industry strategy. It is not the Sports Commission strategy. It is an industry strategy, and within that there is multiple groups at all levels of sport, from community, not-for-profit, local government and state and federal involved, and then therefore I would say that yes, I'm pretty sure there's state sporting organisations involved in those discussions.
Okay.
As an example, but I would need to take it on notice to compile all of the instances we might interact with them.
Yes, and to somehow have a joined-up view of this issue. I would be interested to know if there is a body that would have maybe something, Dr Hughes, when you're speaking to the medical officers in the... I don't know. Take it on notice.
I certainly talk to chief medical officers from the state and territory institutes of sport, but not so much to the state sporting organisations.
So I guess I'll put a lot of questions on notice, but following the recent federal court ruling against Sal Grover, allowing a trans woman access to a women-only app, former British Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies, who founded the Women's Sports Union, a non-for-profit organisation fighting for fair and safe sport for women and girls, states, what's happened now in Australia is you have no rights that protect women whatsoever, they're gone. And I guess that's sort of what the decision, the tickle and giggle decision, and I note your smile, Mr Perkins, at my question, is the result of the court interpreting the Act as it has. That's what people are saying. So my question to you is, do you agree? And if not, why? Following the tickle and giggle. And I'm happy for you to take that on notice if you need to.
Sorry, Senator, what are you asking me if I agree with?
With the comment from the founder of Women's Sports Union, that what's happened now in Australia is you have no rights that protect women whatsoever, they're gone. That's her, that's her perspective, right, okay. Not prior to the tickle and giggle state, because our law is our law, but now the court has interpreted our law in this way that there are no safe spaces for women online or off, that's her statement. And I was asking if you agreed with that, because it is a very fresh situation that we find ourselves in, given the court ruling.
I think, Senator, you're well aware that my personal opinion is not relevant in this chamber, and as I'm not a lawyer, I couldn't possibly interpret the ruling of the federal court, and nor could I interpret the opinion of an Englishwoman who probably also knows little about Australian law.
So I would like you to take on notice the ASC's position following the decision of the tickle and giggle case, and what implication it has on providing safe, fair, not just spaces, but competition for Australian athletes at the elite and the community level. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Look, I just want to firstly...
Because I'm going to go home. But I did want to thank Mr Perkins. This will be his last Senate estimates. He's done a fabulous job representing our country in the pool.
Did you fire me? What's going on?
Oh, no. Well, I just won't... I won't be at the next one, so...
Senator, I've been reappointed for another 5 years, so I'm okay. You've got me for a lot longer.
Wow, because I just went, that's great news. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was a little worried there.
I can't tell you how much I love coming to Senate estimates.
Yeah,
and,
especially the late night session.
Yes, and learning these things about myself. But no, I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, I'm glad that's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr Perkins, I just want to go to the portfolio budget paper. Page 21 shows a declining funding trajectory for the ASC over the forward estimates, with grant funding decreasing from 332 million in 25-26 to 151 million in 29-30, so this has decreased by more than half. Could you give us any insights as to why that funding has so decreased? Are there any terminating programs or any other reasons why we've seen such a dramatic decrease in funding?
Sorry, which table are you referring to?
It's on page 221 of the portfolio budget statement.
Yes, okay, Senator. So the decision of government at this most recent budget was to extend the high performance Winwell funding for 2 more years, which will see that funding continue at its current level for all of our high performance sports through the FY 26-27 and 27-28 forward estimates. The participation-based funding programs received a 1-year terminating measure status for the 26-27 budget year, and so those programs obviously then terminate. Hence the reduction in the 27-28 forward estimates, and then of course 28-29 and beyond. There are no more terminating measures in the current forward estimates.
And what's the impact of that significant decrease in funding on your operations?
So the participation-based programs, Sporting Schools program, which is a program that currently operates around the country, it's well subscribed, and this year we'll see close to 2 million children be involved in after-school free sport. That if that was to terminate and not continue, that obviously would have an impact on the number of children getting the opportunity to play free sport after school. Our Play Well funding programs, which are a raft of different grant programs that go to our national sporting organisations for athletes with a disability, as well as the what's known as the affiliate program, that would limit those organisations' capacity to provide participation-based growth programs within their sporting environments. There is also within that another program, 2 programs known as the local Para Champs and the local Sporting Champs programs. They are direct grants to community-based athletes that provides them funding for equipment, travel and other sport-related activities. Again, another program which is well utilised within our environment, and obviously if that was to not be renewed in the 27-28 budget year, then that would of course have an impact on those individuals who take advantage of that grant program.
So a number of stakeholders in the sporting sector have raised concerns that Commonwealth investment in sport is not translating into proportional funding for national sporting organisations, grassroots clubs or pathway programs. And so there's concerns about delays and bottlenecks in grant allocations. Also, there's a shift towards centrally controlled programs rather than sport-led programs. So just wondering to what extent you would concur with those concerns, and what proportion of your total budget flows directly to NSOs versus retention for internal programs and administration. And I know it varies, obviously, year by year.
So, Senator, the concerns that you mentioned, to be frank, I'm not aware of those concerns. I've not had any sporting organisation approach me to make commentary or have concern about your reference to bottlenecks and centralised control. That's interesting. So the funding that goes to NSOs is subject to grant agreements. Those grant agreements require the sports to provide us with strategies that show that that investment is going to be utilised in a responsible way. It is taxpayers' funding after all, and that the accountabilities on that can be proven out and shown so that at the end of that grant program we're able to acquit those grants in line with the Commonwealth grant rules. And it is, though, fundamentally up to the sports to determine what strategy best suits those sports for them to be able to achieve the participation and high performance outcomes that they look to. We do agree to those. There is a process of engagement and review that ensures that the strategies are mature, deliverable and able to actually be executed by the sports. And then the sports are free to go deliver those programs. So I'm not quite sure what those complaints are you're referring to, but I'm happy to take those on board and provide any response that we can on notice. In terms of the overall funding packages, I would need to do the specific sums and come back to you, but in this budget year, we have total revenue allocation. If I just refer to the PBS. So for the 25-26 year, we will have total revenue of $490 million. The government appropriation of that is $450 million in that bill, and then the remaining revenues are from our own sourced and independent means. Of that, roughly, and I need to come back to you on notice with the exacts, but about 125 of that is on operations, and all of the remainder goes directly to sport.
Have you made any representations to government in relation to the school sporting program, that be a continuing program?
Senator, the budget process is as we all understand it to be, and in this current budget cycle we did make submissions to government for new policy proposals. They were approved for 12 months. And it would be expected that we'll be back again next year with new policy proposals to advocate for the continuation of appropriate programs.
And you had in your budget submission, you proposed that those programs were longer than 12 months?
I believe so, Senator.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Look, I just want to very briefly touch on your national guidelines for the inclusion of transgender and gender diverse people in sport, and I'm looking, these are dated the 12th of June 2019, and I think you've developed those in partnership with the Australian Human Rights Commission and also the Coalition of Major Professional and Participation Sports. There's been another recent decision where the Human Rights Commission determined, and I won't get bogged in the detail, I'm not asking you to respond to this, determined that a lesbian organisation could not lawfully hold an event for biological women only. Now, in that case, the Human Rights Commission was found to have wrongly applied the law. And so that went on appeal, and the Human Rights Commission's decision was not upheld. So I guess I asked the question, you formed these guidelines with the Australian Human Rights Commission. In a recent case, the Human Rights Commission's determination was found not to be consistent with the law. So I'm wondering whether there is any case for you to re-examine your national guidelines. Is that something that you're considering? I know these things are unfolding. These cases are unfolding in recent days and weeks. But I would just draw to your attention that the Human Rights Commission has been wrong in its determination of some of these matters in a recent case, and therefore would that give you cause to revisit your guidelines?
Senator, just for clarity, the guidelines that we developed and released, the transgender and gender diverse inclusion guidelines for high performance sport, were publicly released in June of 2023. The community-based ones in 2019.
I'm looking at the
community-based ones.
The community-based ones of.
Look, Senator,
2009.
Honestly,
2019.
Yeah, the community-based ones. No, I appreciate the difference. Apologies. I'm not aware of that specific court case that you're referring to. We'll take that on notice and would suggest that that probably does require a question to be asked for legal advice on whether or not our policies still remain compliant.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr Perkins. Did you want to add anything, Dr Hughes?
Yeah, just the 2019 document with the Human Rights Commission was a set of guidelines. It wasn't a policy, I don't think. I think it was a set of guidelines.
Yes, I did refer to it as national guidelines.
Yeah, so I don't think it's mandating anything. It's just providing guidance to sport.
No, I appreciate that. I'm not saying it's the gospel, but I'm just, given that these guidelines also set out, I think there's a formal document, and so I'm just, but Mr Perkins has addressed my question, so thank you very much. Thank you all very much for your attendance this evening. Chair, I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Senator Henderson. With that, I say thank you to the Australian Sports Commission for your attendance here and your evidence. You go with the committee's thanks. That concludes today's committee's hearing. Thank you to all witnesses who appeared and to Hansard Broadcasting for their assistance. I remind senators that the committee has agreed that any written questions on notice should be lodged with the Secretariat by 5 June 2026. The committee stands adjourned.